Welcome, folks, to The Uncommon Good with Bo Bonner and Dr. Bud Marr. Every week, diving deep into the truth of Catholic social teaching and restoring all things in Christ.
The Uncommon Good is on the air. I'm Bo Bonner.
I'm Dr. Bud Marr.
We are coming to you from these United States of America, here in the middle of the country, Des Moines, Iowa, where I am the Senior Advisor for Mission Initiatives and the Director for the Center for Human Flourishing at Mercy College of Health Sciences. Bud, what do you do out at the old school?
I am the Associate Provost, emphasis on the associate. No, I don't know. Emphasis on the provost, on the academic side of it.
And we want to say thank you to Mercy College for underwriting our show. But it is Easter, so thank the Lord for being risen and, all that work we put in for Lent, all of that devotion that has brought us here. I wish for everyone in the middle of this Easter octave that this truly be a joyous occasion. Of course, this week of Easter, redoubling with joy, but of course we have a party for the next 50 days, and I know that for a lot of people, the different things we've been through, I really hope people do find time to celebrate.
Yeah, I'm a spiritual weakling, so you get midway through Lent, and you're like, this will never end, I'm going to die, and then Easter shows up, and I do normally go through the, I could have done Lent better.
Well, I mean, that might be true, but I think the time now is to focus on the joy involved and to really realize that, to really realize that you have a duty to be joyful and to celebrate. I'm even thinking about this in terms of the school, of course. We have graduation coming up. Semesters are getting ready to end. Things are starting to bloom, all of that good-natured stuff. But we want to thank Mercy College of Health Sciences for underwriting the show, mchs.edu. And Bud, like I said, I made the note there, we have graduation coming up, people finishing up tests, finishing up semesters. It's always an honor to be a part of the lives of the students who are going out to extend the healing ministry of Mercy College. But yes, in the most basic way, thanks Mercy College for underwriting our show and making it possible.
Yeah, like any line of work, it can have its bumps, but it really is great to get to commencement. I mean, that's one of the shining lights of the year, and to see, these students who have sacrificed a great deal, I think, over the last few years, really step into some exciting careers.
So mchs.edu, go check that out if you as well want to walk across that stage one day and right into working for healing our communities. So, Bud, appropriate to the time of year, keeping up with the show series we started in the new year, where we are talking about the difference sacrificial leadership makes, leadership in the key of Christ. It only makes sense and befits us to talk about the resurrection. So that's what we're going to talk about today, sacrificial leadership and the resurrection. And I'm hoping that everybody out there who was able to take as part as they could in the Holy Triduum, all of the feasts that led up to this, but then, of course, the joyous occasion of Easter, can start to think about that Christ is a leader precisely in that way before we get into the show, that he leads us out of the grave into heaven, and that is on people's minds as we celebrate this glorious season.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've talked about Christ for the last few episodes now, and some of what we've covered has been challenging, like in a good way, but our Lord certainly asked us to set a high bar, to put it in some language. But the great thing about today's show is I think we're going to give a reminder of the promise, like the foundational promise of God, which gives us the strength and the courage to pass through difficult times.
Now, speaking of strength and courage, Bud, what's the big Easter meal that you guys have? Like, we're big, and by we're, I mean I forced this on my family, yeah. Spiral ham for Easter. That's one of our things. Do you guys have one?
Yeah, it's not very original, but for us, it's ham too. And I feel like really at Easter, I need like a certain kind of bun. Like it feels like Easter comes with great
carbs,
dinner rolls.
That's right.
Yeah,
carbs, ham, and the candy that the kids have done a good job of holding back on. And Lord knows that various animals might be finding eggs filled with candy, throughout the week or whatever. But we hope that you all out in Radio Land are having a joyous Easter, that he is risen, and we're glad that you get to join us this Wednesday. And like I said, hope that everything is going with the joy attenuate to the resurrection. So, of course, this is the Uncommon Good, Bo Bonner and Dr. Bud Marr. We're glad you're joining us. Stick around. We'll get back with Sacrificial Leadership, the Common Good, and the Risen Lord. This is the Uncommon Good, and we'll be back right after this.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio provided by the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. Established in Des Moines in 1924, St. Vincent de Paul assists those living in poverty to become self-sufficient by helping to remove roadblocks on their journey out of poverty. St. Vincent de Paul helps with food, clothing, and shelter, while also offering classes in financial literacy, high school completion, career readiness, and prisoner reentry. Shop, donate, volunteer, serve. The Society of St. Vincent de Paul, svdpdsm.org.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by Marr Security, a Catholic-owned family business providing security solutions for homes and businesses since 1953. PerMarSecurity.com, 515-244-5660.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by Bozen the Florist. Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, weddings, whatever the message, say more with Bozen. Bozen.com, 515-244-ROSE. Bozen makes the moment mean more.
Iowa Catholic Radio would like to thank our business partner, Fast Signs. Learn more about their signs, digital signs, banners, and other products and services at fastsigns.com or 515-224-1210.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by Bell Construction. Bell Construction is a full-service residential and commercial roofing contractor in the Des Moines area since 1988. Bell Construction, 515-963-4494. Thank you, Bell Construction, for supporting Iowa Catholic Radio.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio provided by Mercy College of Health Sciences, where you can chart your course for more.
Mercy College provides unparalleled clinical rotations, hands-on learning, accelerated education, and flexible schedules. Since 1899, Mercy College has been transforming students into healthcare professionals. Guided by Catholic values, our faculty put classroom theory into practice. Students are prepared for roles in service and leadership throughout their own careers.
Learn more at mchs.edu. Mercy College of Health Sciences, mchs.edu.
Back with the Uncommon Good. Bo Bonner and Dr. Bud Marr joining you this Wednesday. Happy Easter. We're glad that you're joining us here in the middle of the week. And as we said in the opening, we hope you are having a festive time celebrating the resurrection of the Lord. But as is appropriate, because we are talking about the difference Jesus makes in leadership and that Catholic leadership has to look and conform to his life, we're going to talk about how the resurrection plays into sacrificial leadership. I think the best way to start this, Bud, is if you've listened so far, you might get the idea that it's absolutely no fun to be a leader. There's been a lot about sacrifice and pouring yourself out. Obviously, when we look at the events of Holy Week, if you don't wait till the end, it can really seem like a big bummer. But of course, the joy that comes with the resurrection outstrips any of the difficulties that go into the crucifixion, the passion, and everything like that. The joy of the resurrection, so to speak, is a goal worthy of its own, that we would be willing to put any sort of effort into it, the pearl of great price. When that comes to leadership, but I think it's important for us to realize that the reason that we are willing to pour ourselves out and put all of this difficult effort into leading differently than the world does is not because we think it gets results, but because we have a firm faith, a firm hope, and a love of the people and what we're doing, that to lead this way has the sort of capacity to outstrip what would be like the results if we tried to rely on our own merits.
Yeah, I can kind of joke about it because it's not my cup of tea, but in the Christian world right now, you'll find in some places what are called seeker-friendly churches. And it's an interesting phenomenon. I think like the folks who are about it are well-intentioned, but the idea is like the most important thing is to bring souls into the kingdom. And so you're seeker-friendly. You sort of structure church in such a way that, you know, outsiders would be excited to come or whatever. But what it's kind of turned into is like not only sort of like stylistic music or whatever, but also comfy seats, and you can grab like a cappuccino before you go sit down in church. Catholics are kind of wondering what this is all about. But, you know, you can sort of get like pulled into that way of thinking. And I've always thought like if you're a seeker-friendly pastor and you're serious about the gospel, there's got to come a tough moment because you sort of like lull people to sleep with the cappuccino and the comfy seats, then you're like, yeah, if you're going to follow Christ, you've got to deny yourself and take up your cross daily.
We have some bad news for you.
Just
Here
to let
at the
you
11th
hour. Right when they get comfy with the cappuccino. But like, in seriousness about it, Jesus says, well, Bo, what inspired that thought was your idea about, like, if you've listened to the last few episodes, being a leader might not sound like an appealing idea. But I think, again, going back to the gospel, it's interesting because our Lord says if you're going to follow him, you have to deny yourself and take up your cross daily. And on a natural level, as human beings, that's a tough message to hear. On the flip side, he says, my burden is easy and my yoke is light. And how do we bring those two ideas together? I think it goes back to the resurrection. Like, those who die to self, those who die for the sake of the kingdom, they're risen to this new and greater life. We know that most of all and centrally because of our Lord's resurrection, but we've seen it play out all, over and over again in history with the saints.
Yeah, and I think when this gets into the practical brass tacks of leading, you're leading your family, you're leading an organization, you're leading whatever, it's important to just admit that leading is tough work and involves a lot of situations where if you thought the goal is to be optimistic that you'll get results, I think a lot of leaders would quit more often. In fact, I think a lot of leaders fall into the bad habits of leadership we've pointed out through the arc of these series because they get in thinking with a lot of optimism and see it thwarted. It is much better to go into leadership admitting that it will give you the scars of the crucifixion before it will make you feel like amped up and ready to go each week. It is going to be a matter of pouring yourself out and carrying a cross. But one of the important things to remember is if we go in looking instead of optimism, hope, if we're looking and having faith and hope, the resurrection sort of hope that even in the depth of the grave, new life is ready to spring anew out of that Easter tomb, we can actually find ourselves but in leadership positions where it looks like there's no way forward. And the optimists begin to cry and quit. And the people who only worry about results think there's no way forward. It's the leaders that have poured themselves out with resurrection hope that can start to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Because remember, leaders, it only means getting you to where you want to go. So it's not results. It's a place. And leaders are trying to get us to a place. Christ wants to get us to heaven. All of us have to be leaders because in some way we're going to lead people to heaven. But even in organizations, the idea is there's a place we want to get people more than results. And if we stop white-knuckling the results and the sort of way in which we think we're going to force the results, and we start to have faith and hope, the love of that place, that destination, we will be amazed at the ways in which love sees us through the different graves our leadership arc, our life as leaders, present before us. And we have to have that sort of resurrection faith, hope, and love, or we are just going to be thwarted by the slings and arrows of this life.
Yeah, there's a way you could mishear a phrase that we like to use on the show. I've quoted Mother Theresa before, and she famously talked about how we're called not to results, but to faithfulness. And I think some of us, when we hear Mother Theresa say that, we just hear that first part, like we're not called to results. And I've seen individuals operate in this way where they say, I'm going to let go and let God, and they really let go, and it's not a good thing.
Right.
It's
make sure Jesus has literally taken the wheel before you let go of the wheel, to use the country song.
I'm tempted to tell a joke, but I'm a poor joke teller. But there's a story about someone like stranded in Alaska, and he prays to God that he would be saved. And these different like travelers come by, and he keeps saying like, no, I'm trusting God, I'm praying. And when he dies and gets to heaven, he says like, God, why did you let me die? And God says, well, I sent you all these three rescuers or whatever. But that, like, when we say it's not about results, it's about faithfulness. We're not saying you can't like stop thinking about results, but it frees us up to be like, the best way to think about it is to look to individuals like Catherine McCauley, who founded the Sisters of Mercy. In the face of trying circumstances, they were willing to risk faithfulness because they knew that God was in control of the results. And that, like so often in life, if you turn on the 5 o'clock news, you'll see this all the time. As we approach issues and problems, like you said, Bo, we white-knuckle it because the way that the world thinks about things is like, this world is all that there is, and so you have to cling to the results and you have to cling to the resources. But believing in resurrection and having true resurrection hope actually frees us up not to not care about the results at all, but to take the courage and risk to follow Jesus and to take him at his word.
I don't know how many times I've said this. I don't know if I've said this on the show or other podcasts, but it's worth repeating. It's my big probiotic story, which is anybody who grew up in the 80s, no one ever talked about good bacteria. You just, took you took antibiotics and wondered why your tummy hurt for like a week. But then all of a sudden they were like, no, there's good bacteria. You should drink this yogurt that has good bacteria. And we're like, what are you talking about? Now everybody knows that. But the reason I bring up bacteria, Bud, is, when you actually push out one organism with another, it's not gradual, or at least doesn't seem that way. This is why you'll go to sleep not really sick, just kind of feeling and then you'll wake up totally sick. And in some ways, healing is like that. You feel bad, you feel bad, you feel bad until the one day, right, that the good bacteria sort of punctuate the equilibrium and totally shifts and they compete the bad bacteria. The bad bacteria goes away. Leadership is much more like that. You're lost, you're lost, you're lost, you're found. Problem, 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 resolution. The grave, the grave, the grave, resurrection. And so with leadership, part of being patient and long-suffering is not this idea that to do so will kind of smoothly, like change in an organization is never very like diagonal, right? Starts here and easily goes up. No, it's usually like trow, hill, victory, right? And so the resurrection teaches us to have that courage, that long suffering, that patience that is not just being, like we've said multiple times, a doormat that keeps getting kicked, but the hope that if we're willing to go down, like Dante, right? Down, out, and through, that on the other side of some grave, some difficult conversation, some difficult thing we have to face, if we face it with faith, hope, and love, the resurrection moment will far outstrip anything like, just stair-stepping improvements. Now, if you happen to be an accrediting agency, what they usually talk about, right, is wanting to see small incremental steps. And what's funny, Bud, is I think in hindsight, you'll actually see the incremental steps. But as you live them, it just seems like death, death, death until the resurrection. And that's the sort of faith, hope, and love the resurrection teaches leaders to have. I mean, of course, this is obviously most importantly true in the life of salvation. But I think sacrificial leaders have to realize that that's what keeps them going in the difficult times they'll inevitably face. And speaking of difficult times, I've talked too much. 30 seconds until we get to the break here. When we get back, but I think we can sort of close some of that loop. Of course, we could talk about the resurrection for the entirety of the rest of the year and not overdo or even exhaust the sort of mystery of how it helps us lead on the ground. But that last metaphor to always think about, Christ is leading us out of the grave into heaven. We should be willing to lead people out of the graves of difficult circumstances into the place we're all going together. This is The Uncommon Good, and we'll be back right after this.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by Skeffington's Formal Wear, in business since 1951, with locations in Des Moines, West Des Moines, Coralville, and Ankeny. Skeffington's Formal Wear, fitting you for life celebrations. Online at skeffingtons.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by Ashworth Vision Clinic. Complete eye exams, contact lenses, glasses, glaucoma testing, and pre- and post-operative care. 515-440-4610. AshworthVision.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by Dental Associates, addressing your smile needs and dreams. 515-225-6742. Des Moines-DentalAssociates.com. Thank you, Dental Associates, for your support of Iowa Catholic Radio.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by Golden Rule Heating and Cooling. Since 1999, Golden Rule Heating and Cooling has been supporting customers with their rules to live by: respect, understanding, loyalty, expertise, and service. GoldenRulePHC.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by Confluence Brewing Company, brewed locally since 2012 and featuring regular, seasonal, and limited release beers. Confluence Brewing Company, 1235 Thomas Beck Road off the bike trail south of Grays Lake. ConfluenceBrewing.com. Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by Dr. David Ball from Des Moines Eye Surgeons, your total eye care specialist specializing in cataracts and glaucoma care. Des Moines Eye Surgeons, 515-255-3546, DMEyesurgeons.com.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio is provided by the Sarah Vocations Ministry. Sarah is an apostolate dedicated to the support of new and existing vocations to the priesthood and consecrated life. Learn more at joinsarah.org, joinserra.org.
Thank you, Caldwell Parish, for underwriting Iowa Catholic Radio. Conform to the wishes of the deceased and to Catholic liturgical burial traditions. Caldwell Parish Funeral Home, Des Moines' only Catholic-owned and operated funeral home. CaldwellParish.com.
Back to the Uncommon Good. Bo Bonner and Dr. Bud Marr coming to you this Wednesday. Thank you for listening to the show. If you want to get details about what's going on this Easter season here at Iowa Catholic Radio, you can do so at iowacatholicradio.com or all the myriad ways in which you can look up what they're up to on social media. Bud, to close out today's show, sacrificial leadership and the resurrection of Christ, the difference that makes. Hopefully people start to see, right, that there is that real idea of faith, hope, and love that we have from the resurrection that should guide us as leaders. As we're getting done with the show here, what's the last note we want to leave for folks thinking about this way?
Well, I'm going to give a phrase here, and it's going to sound cliche at first, but I think it's really true. There's this idea that crisis reveals character, and I think there is a deep truth to that, and that as human beings, we can kind of feign certain values and things when times are easy. But when things get really rough, you usually see like the root personality or values of someone. And I think for leadership, what that means for us is because of the resurrection, because of the promises that Christ gave to us, even in the most challenging of times, we still have the possibility of faithfulness. We can speak truthfully. We can act rightly no matter what comes our way. And the great example, of course, as always, is Christ himself. And what I'm thinking of during this Easter season is the story of his passion, and especially the moment where Pilate says to Christ, and you know that last segment where you're talking about like decision-making in the world sometimes being circumscribed by death. I think Pilate uses this fear for a moment because when Jesus won't give him the answers that he wants, he says, like, do you know who I am? Like, do you know I'm the one that can turn you over to the people? And Jesus says, he says in response that you would have no power over me if it were not given to you from above. And so in that terrible moment, like if you think about being arrested and facing an ignominious death like crucifixion, how many of us would collapse under the weight of that moment? But Jesus is able to look Pilate in the eye and speak truthfully about the dynamics at play and the reality that's really at work. Now, in our day-to-day lives, like especially in the different vocations that God has called us to, that's more of an art form than a science, and it's going to look differently. It's going to take on different shapes depending on our station in life. But I think that moment in Jesus' life is a great thing to reflect on.
And I think that gets to the heart of this is, in order to be a leader, you have to take on a lot of cares that, you know, if you were going to be like a holy hermit in the wood, you don't have to. And God has called us, and like, you know, we've said, all of us eventually have to help lead people to heaven. We will all be leaders in some way. But the question starts to be, how do you make sure to not have leadership, like we've long said, be some sort of attribute, be some sort of possession? The problem is if you do that, when you face the Pilates of the world and they try to get hardcore on you like that, you will wilt, because they can take that all away. But if leadership for you, my friends, is not a possession, it's not who you are, it's not an identity, a status, it's not any of those things. If it's sacrificial, if you've poured yourself out, what can Pilate take? And that starts to be the resurrection hope. It's not only that Jesus knows what's going to happen in the resurrection. He knows the resurrection is going to happen because he has already poured himself out. To be sacrificial in leadership, kenotic, to pour yourself out, is to not need to fear anyone. Even if they take away your job title or anything out, if you've poured yourself out as a leader, they don't have anything on you. And that, to me, is the power of a resurrection faith, hope, and love as a leader. They can look any Pilate situation in the eye and say, you have no authority over me. Those are the leaders that we should want. That's the leaders that we should aspire to be. And I think we all can do that through the grace of the resurrected Christ. That should be the difference Catholic leaders should show, that they don't need to blink at Pilate because of the courage that faith, hope, and love in the resurrection allows them. But that courage is because they've poured themselves out, and there's nothing for Pilate to take, not even the glory that will come from the cross to the resurrection. This is the uncommon good. May Jesus Christ, the Prince of Peace, reign in our hearts, our family, our city, our state, our nation, world, galaxy, the whole kit and caboodle. This is the uncommon good, and we'll be back next week. But if people want to join us in this joyous Easter season, praying for in joy and thanksgiving, but also for the concerns of the world, how are ways they can do so?
Yeah, you can pray the rosary anytime, anywhere using the Iowa Catholic Radio app, but we also broadcast it. The rosary is prayed on air at 6 in the morning and 10 a.m., and then in the afternoon at 2:55 p.m., we have the Divine Mercy Chaplet.
So we got a lot of stuff coming up. The next Man Up West Power Lunch is Friday, May 13th at noon, St. Francis of Assisi Parish in West Des Moines. Jesse Weiler is scheduled to talk on the Mass. He will explain the two foundational principles of the sacramental theology. Lunch will be provided by Chick-fil-A, where you're welcome to bring your own. Iowa Catholic Radio welcomes Scott McCreary with special guest Allie Colleen to the Iowa Event Center Ballroom, Sunday, July 24th. Tickets and information available at celebratecountry.org. Iowa Catholic Radio 15th Anniversary Footprints of God Pilgrimage to the Holy Land with Steve Ray, Matt Wilkham, and Father P.J. McManus, November 11th through the 23rd in 2023. And then, of course, remember to like Iowa Catholic Radio on Facebook and go to Twitter at IA Catholic Radio. You can also download the Iowa Catholic Radio app, listen live, and donate. And, of course, we want to remind you we love your prayers, your donating your time, but also materially donating to us keeps this Easter ministry alive, that we can talk about the resurrection of Jesus. So please either go online, iowacatholicradio.com, use the app, or call 515-223-1150 to donate today. Bud, glorious resurrection week to you. God bless. Christ is risen. He's risen indeed. I hope your family is will join the feast and celebrate well.
Yes, Easter blessings to all our listeners. Thank you.
This is The Uncommon Good. We'll be back next week.
The Uncommon Good with Bo Bonner and Dr. Bud Marr is heard every week on wonderful Catholic stations like this one, and anytime on podcast. Just search for The Uncommon Good.
Support for Iowa Catholic Radio and The Uncommon Good provided by Mercy College of Health Sciences. Learn more at mchs.edu.